try to get through it the best we can. But we want to thank everyone for coming to help honor my dad. My name's Rob Atkins. They call me BH. Anybody want to know what that stands for? You'll have to ask one of the brothers. They think it's pretty funny. It used to be funny, but not anymore. So I'm not quite sure where to start. I watch obituaries and things like that in the paper, and they always say people died suddenly, and they don't really elaborate on it too much. So I just kind of wanted to tell you what happened to my dad. He was kind of, sorry, I'm a little shaky here, kind of emotional about it, but so he's been struggling with his heart condition for a while, and over Easter this last year, he looked very ill, and his heart wasn't quite functioning. And I think, and I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I think it was maybe like 50% functioning correctly, and that was in Easter. So usually he goes up to Leech Lake, is the place that he loved forever. And he usually goes up on opening walleye season day, which is, I believe, May 1st. So he had doctor's appointments, and all of his brothers had talked about him. We didn't really want him to go up there to Leech Lake because there aren't very many hospitals. So there wasn't really anywhere for him to go. So it was kind of a battle trying to get him to stay here in Des Moines where his cardiologist is. So we kind of figured, we all talked about it and decided that it would be the best place for him in Ramona. So Sean took him up there, and we figured that, all the boys and all the families would be up there, just like every year. Because everybody just loved it up there. It was so fun. Ramona was always the reservation specialist. And it was just awesome. And she always made appetizers in the afternoon for everybody with her great cooking skills. And my dad, as everyone knows, he was kind of the activities director and the dessert master, and not just one dessert. With every meal, we would have to have dilly bars or something really sweet, which he loved. So we made it up there. Everyone made it up there. I think Brad made it up first in July or so, and then it was Sean, and then Scott was there, and then Clint has a place there now, so he was there all the time, kind of watching him, taking care of him. And I went up in August 17th, and we got there on a Saturday, and that night we kind of had an episode, and we're like, wow, he looks terrible. We got to take him to the doctor. And we didn't really tell him, because he was kind of hard-headed. He didn't really want to go. So, does that sound like my dad? He had a plan for everything, and then a plan for that. So, the next morning on Sunday, I asked him to come down to my motorhome, which is just on the other side of Ross's, so maybe 50 feet or so. On the way down there, he had to stop 3 times to catch his breath, and kind of, he really wasn't doing very good. So we visited a little bit, and I said, hey, let's go back up to your place, and, we'll rest and, have some fun. And he said, I can't make it. I really can't make it. I said, well, what do you mean you can't make it? And he said, I can't make it. And he said, well, you gotta pull the car down. And I said, okay, well, it's only 50 feet. So I pulled the car down, and I said, jump in. So he jumped in, and I went past his place, and he looked at me, because he always, what are you doing? There's my place. Hey, come on. Just really laying into me. And I said, hey, well, we're going to go to the doctor. He said, we're not going to the doctor. Turn around. And really gave it to me. And he, when we talked about it, he got a little more upset. He said, well, I'm calling the sheriff on you. And I said, well, you're calling the sheriff on me. I'm calling the sheriff on you. You're not doing the right thing. You're not taking care of yourself. So it was a long ride to Park Rapids. And we didn't really realize how bad it was for him, but they were going to air flight him to either Minneapolis or North Dakota. So we were there 8 hours that day, and finally they decided that they were going to airlift him, but the weather was too bad at that point. So he had to take the ambulance ride. And you know what he said? Well, I'll do it on my terms, but I want to make sure the siren's on and the lights, and I want to turn them on myself. So he said, okay, Dad, you got it. So we made it to North Dakota, the hospital there. Really nice place, and he was doing pretty good. He was getting, the first couple days he wasn't getting any better because he had a lot of fluid on his lungs, so he couldn't breathe very well because he had congestive heart failure. And so started to get a little better, but he really was tired of being there. And they had all the cords on him and everything like that. And he was just getting really antsy. And one day we were sitting there kind of talking, and he saw these scissors over on the side. He said, "Hey, give me those scissors." And I said, "What do you mean? What do you want those scissors for?" He goes, "And give me those shoes. I'm cutting these wires off, and we're getting the hell out of here." And I said, "Okay." It was pretty funny. So, trying to think of what else I want to tell you. Give me a second here. But he was a pretty funny guy. So, we obviously didn't do that. And then Wednesday, I think it was, we had, he really wanted to see Ramona. So Clint and I took him up, and we went up, and they were only let two of us in the ICU at the time, so we kind of had to rotate and everything. But I just remember when Ramona and Dad were in there, and they said they loved each other, and they told us good news that he was going to be out Saturday, and everything was going to be fine. And then Thursday night, I went home with those guys, and I was going to come back Thursday or Friday or whenever, and we were all going to pick him up, and we were so excited, weren't we, Ramona? Because we thought he was coming home. And even that night, we were playing cards at the house, and he called on the phone, and I answered because I wanted to see what he wanted. He's like, coming back to his plan again. "Well, you make sure you pull Alana and Victoria 32 miles an hour, and don't go past the boxcar too far because they're getting old." And I hung up the phone with him, and the next day they called and he passed. His heart just quit. For a guy that had such a big heart, physically he just couldn't do it anymore. So that's how everything kind of ended. And it was sad for all of us. So on that note, I guess the one thing he was a great guy, and he did a lot for everyone, is what I want to convey to everybody. But on a different note, to kind of change the subject a little bit, so I do want to say that's the end of what I'm going to talk about tonight, but I do want to share with you that, I do have two older sisters, Brad and Sean, and they say, they might tell stories about me when I was younger, and just remember, everything that I did when I was younger was very well thought out, and it always seemed like a good idea in the beginning. So, whatever they say, just take it with a grain of salt, okay? And I know Clint and Scott would never say anything bad, because they're younger, they know. Okay? So, the last thing I'd like to say a prayer to get this started. I found this on my dad's iPad, and I didn't know what his favorite prayer was, and it's still on that iPad. I have that for you, Brad, tonight. So, if everyone could bow their heads, I'd like to say this prayer for us. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
So, my dad was a 50-year Mason. I found that in his wallet, all of his membership cards, and none of us really knew that. So, Bill Post with Masons would like to come up here and say a few things. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bill Post. I'm past Grand Master of Masons in Iowa, a privilege I had about 3 years ago. And Jim belonged to Mahaska Lodge, number 644. And 3 years ago, I rededicated Mahaska Lodge for its 100th anniversary. Now, I just want to say to the brethren in the room, to the family, and to the friends, we're called upon this evening to mourn the loss of a brother from our Masonic fraternity. From time immemorial, it's been the custom among the fraternity of ancient free and accepted Masons to offer before the world the last tribute of our affection, and thus to demonstrate in the strongest manner possible our past esteem for our brother and our steadfast faith in the principles of our fraternity. Brother James Lloyd Atkins was initiated to the degree of an entered apprentice on August 8th, 1970. He was passed the degree of a fellow craft on January 13th, 1971, and he was raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason on February 27th, 1971. He was a 54-year Mason. And I don't think Brother Jim attended Lodge a lot because he did move around. However, the fact that he had a stack of dues cards in his wallet told me that he was proud to be a Mason. And even though he may not have attended a lot, he was a Mason by nature, and in name. If I wanted to be like a Mason, I'd rather be a Mason by nature than not in name. So it's my understanding that Brother Jim didn't talk about Masonry very much. And that's very unfortunate. When he was raised back in those days, you didn't talk about Masonry very much because if you wanted to join the Masonic fraternity, you needed to ask somebody, a brother that you would like to join. Well, that has changed. But Brother Jim would have talked about the friendships he made in Lodge, if he was here, and the brotherhood. He would have perhaps reflected on the business connections he made because he was a Mason. Brother Jim would have told you that Masonry helped him mold his character to make friends, not only with others, but with himself. That Masonry taught him to care about the future as well as the past, and guided him to do what he can, both alone and with others, to make the future brighter for everyone. That his faith was important, that he kept faith with himself, with his family, with his fellow man, and most importantly, with his God. That is just a few things that Brother Jim would have said about how Masonry helped him. And now, his search for further light has been rewarded, as he now holds the light of a new life in the world everlasting. Divested of the material things of earth, he has not gone empty-handed, but with the workmanship of his Masonic character. Into the presence of a loving Father, whose goodness and mercy know no bounds. May we realize that human life is a preparation for a greater life beyond, and it is through the gate of death that we find entrance to the place of refreshment and rest. To the relatives and friends of our brother, let us say we deeply, sincerely, and most affectionately sympathize with you in your sorrow. This lambskin, or white leather apron, is an emblem of innocence and the badge of a Mason. More ancient than the golden fleece or Roman eagle, more honorable than the star and garter or any other order which earthly power can confer. As an emblem of innocence, its whiteness demonstrates our belief in that purity of the soul, which is the wondrous gift of our Heavenly Father. As the badge of a worker, it reminds us that our brother's earthly labors are finished. Jim has laid aside the working tools of life, and having wrought well and conscientiously, shall surely hear from him who reviews each human life. No condemnation, no reproach, no censure, but those life-giving, soul-strengthening words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter now into the joy of thy Lord. This evergreen, which once marked the temporary resting place of the illustrious dead, is an emblem of our faith in the immortality of the soul. By it, we are reminded of that immortal part, which survives the grave and can never die. Let us pray. Soft and safe to you, my brother, be this mortal bed. Bright and beautiful be thy rising from it. With fragrance eternal may the sprig of acacias flourish. May the earliest buds of spring unfold their beauties over your resting place. And may the sweetness of the summer's last rose linger longest. Though the cold blasts of autumn may lay them in the dust, and for a time destroy their loveliness, yet their fading is not final, and in the springtime they will surely bloom again. So in the bright morn of the world's resurrection, your mortal frame will again spring into newness of life, and expand in immortal beauty in the heavens beyond the skies. Until then, my brother, until then, farewell. And now may the blessing of heaven rest upon us all. May brotherly love prevail, and every moral and social virtue cement us. Amen.
Thanks, Bill. So I'm going to just introduce folks as they're going to come up, so everybody sort of has a frame of reference. The committee, as the five brothers became known as, trying to figure out who, the committee was formed on deciding whether they could go up to the Leech Lake this summer, but then it became part of this, and who could we get to talk? And Rick Phelps is going to be first, who I always knew as R.E.H. Phelps Jr. From Jim. And Jim and Rick grew up together. Denny Dummermuth taught school with Jim. And then Garrett Hulse worked with him at the bank. And then Sean Clinton and I will round it out, and then Caitlin will play. And then if you're still here, Rob's wife Brooke put all this together. It has music set to it that she put with it. We'll play that after Caitlin's done. So, Mr. Phelps, if you would please. And by the way, when I got up there and everything else went down, Rob and them had done all through this all day long. Rob says to me, "Tell some funny stories about Dad." I said, "Rob, they all involve you, so I don't know."
Yes, my name is Richard Phelps. I live in Mingo, Iowa. Jim and I were classmates in New Sharon in North Nebraska. And I spent from 2 to 3 this morning thinking of what I was gonna say today. And I just can't limit it to just Jim, because, you know, we all think back about how idyllic our past was, or times in the past when we were growing up. Well, New Sharon was idyllic back in the 50s and the 60s. And there were only 3 of us in our class, boys. It was Dale Butcher, Jim, and I. And Jim moved into town when his dad died at age, I think it was 4th grade. Wayne Shaw is here, he's the only other person here. I don't, Wayne, raise your hand, where are you? He was our classmate. He thinks it was 3rd grade, but Jim moved in with his mother and his sister, who was here, Linda, with her grandmother at the corner of the school, right corner from New Sharon School. I never did know when Jim actually got to school, because he would never come across until his first class. So at 8 o'clock, when everybody else was at school, Jim's probably still in bed. And so I never did actually see him come to school. But we had, you know, I knew Sharon back then. We were, in summertime, we were on our bikes all day long. we knew every place in town. It was just, we would show up maybe for lunch at one of our homes, get something to eat. And it really was idyllic. I remember when we were, I did supply a picture. It was the six of us, we were 10, in fifth grade. It was Dale Butcher and I, Jim, and Mary Ladd, Dixie Shaw, and Peggy Klinsman, Peggy's house. And there were only 3 of us boys, there were 4 girls, one of which was kind of ignored, but and so we knew each other, and like Jim and I, when we were, I don't know, when we were probably 10, 11, whenever we could score a cigarette, we would take our bikes down to his garden in west end of town and smoke them. And we didn't score them very often, but we did once in a while. And there was always this big dog that chased us. One day he said, well, what are we gonna do about this dog? And I said, well, so I hit it. And the next thing I know, I'm on my back on the gravel, all straight up. The milkman with his truck came by and loaded my bicycle up and took me home. And that was when we were about 10. But, and that's what I say, you just can't limit yourself to just Jim by himself, because we as a community, you know, on Saturday nights, the stores, the town was open, him and Drug on the corner, the Yankees Cafe, was the hangout, and if you're gonna take a bath during the week, you did it on Saturdays, so you could go to town. And, I think some of our classmates did that, but, anyway, just some anecdotes, like Halloween, for instance. Jim and I, and probably a couple others, Dale, we would dump over the last remaining outdoor toilet in New Sheridan. And we knew where it was. I don't know who the guy, who it was it belonged to, but it was the outdoor skivvy, and we would dump it over every Halloween for several years. And then we would do other things, like we almost lost Dale early when we were running through a yard and he ran into a clothesline. And I'm not sure, we weren't really sure he was gonna make it, because he was the fastest one of us all. And so we did those things. And you know, when we got to be older, in high school, for instance, we would go, we had a good friend out in Tainter. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Tainter, Iowa. Moose, we call it Moose. We would go out there and his dad would take us out to the North Skunk River, and they had straightened it. But, so it was only like a foot and a half deep, except when you came to the 8-foot hole. And so, one day we're out there and Gordon was sitting between us. And I don't know which one of us did it, I'm not gonna admit to it, pushed him into the hole, and Moose could not swim a lick. And so I'm underneath and pulling him, pushing him up, and Jim's pulling him ashore, so he wouldn't drown in front of his dad. And Moose always got back at us because he tried to kill us a number of times. He would always have the fastest car, the newest car in the class, probably in the county. And there were several times when either Jim or I said, Moose, stop the goddamn car. We're getting off now, and get out. And so, Moose got back at us, but we had several instances, you know, like Jim and I went to the Methodist church, and there was a time when the president of the bank wife decided that she was going to teach Sunday school. And must be because she thought it would be her, do some civic duty to get involved in the community. So we're up there, and I don't know, we were either middle school or teenagers, or, I don't know how old we were, but she said, well, now, anybody who doesn't wanna read the section that, in the Bible that we're talking about here, doesn't have to. Okay. So she came to me and says, I don't think I wanna read that. And then she goes to Jim and he says, I don't wanna read that either. And she, put her book down, grabbed her purse and left. And never came back. And so that was the, incident at the church. Second incident at the church was I had a dog named Rags who went with us everywhere. And one day we were in church and the sermon was going on, it was Reverend Wrinkle. And, the front door of the church was open, it was a beautiful day. And here comes Rags, my dog, and he doesn't find us, he finds Jim. And so he goes to Jim in the middle of the service, and, he was somewhat embarrassed, but we took Rex back, and he came back a second time. And so he, you know, in those days, you didn't have leashes. I don't know where leash business came from. Or if you're gonna walk your dog today, you have to have a leash, and you have to pick up the poop. Well, I don't know where that came from, because if you had a dog in New Sharon, and you had a dog, and we didn't have a leash. I don't think we ever had a leash. And the dog would go with you everywhere. And so it was almost Jim's dog as well as mine. But, it was a really good time to grow up in the fifties and the sixties. In the eighth grade, New Sharon, Barn City, and Lacey combined after almost having a civil war consolidate. And, I remember, and I think Wayne was probably the instigator of this. Mr. Schultz, Teacher Schultz, bald-headed, was the bus monitor. He was a school teacher, and he would ride the bus with us to Barn City. And I don't know, one day we decided that we were gonna throw spitballs to Teacher Schultz's head, bald head. And we did that, and there were about 5 of us that ended up having to, write, I will not throw spitballs at Teacher Schultz 2,000 times on a blackboard.
Oh, goodness.
There were about 5 of us that had to do that. And one day, going to Barn City, the rear axle of the bus just sunk in the road. It was a gravel road, it just sunk. So we had to go get another bus, because we were stranded. So, it was an interesting time, something that you probably won't experience today with a bus. And just a couple other things. One day Jim and I are out in what we call goat hills. And I'm driving, and the only reason we would have been there is we would have scored a six pack. Because that's where we drank the beer that we ever that we got. And a cow did a somersault over my hood. Literally, it did a somersault over my hood of the car. And we stopped the car, and Jim gets out, and goes down to the ditch where it's laying, and kicks it a couple times, and it gets up and trots off. So, it was one of those things where growing up in New Sharon was great. How many people get to kick a cow? So, anyway, I just wanted to give some of the anecdotes that we had growing up. It was a good time. We were on our own all summer long. We didn't have to worry about soccer. or any other of these sports. We had Little League and that was it. One of our classmates' dad was the referee umpire, and he was deaf and dumb. And whatever that call was rah! And you had to look at his hand to see whether you were out or safe. And, so, just another anecdote, just growing up, you remember these things. And like I said, I spent from 2 to 3 this morning thinking about some of these stories that we can tell. Jim was a good guy. I did not have much contact with him after high school, but occasionally. And we would always meet once a year up in Minnesota to have breakfast at Park Rapids. And other than that, I'm sorry that I didn't know. I was up at the lake when he died. And I'm sorry that I did not know that he was at the hospital in Fargo because I was only 40 miles from there. I could have gone. But that's here and there. But anyway, I appreciate the offer to speak. And like I said before, it was a good time growing up in New Sharon in the 50s. And I know there's some people here that are our age. I don't know many of you. In fact, the ones that I should know, I probably don't. And you probably have the same experience as we did growing up. So thank you very much.
Thanks. And Rick, I'm correct, right? Your dad delivered Jim.
I did, he did.
Yes, that's right. Danny Dummermoon, you're on. You don't have to talk as long as Rick, it's okay. Don't feel compelled to.
Well, I got to know Jim after Rick had initiated him. We taught school together at North Mahaska. And I was there from 1970 to 74, and he might have been there a year longer. And when we were teaching school at North Mahaska, we were friends, but we weren't really good friends at that time. We had to wait a while. In 1974, we both left North Mahaska and went into the insurance business. And then from about 1974 to 76, there's a lot of changes that took place in our lives. Jim and Ramona got together, and they had 5 boys. Judy and I, a year and a half later, got together. We had 2 boys and 2 girls. That's a lot of kids when we got together, which was quite often. They had quite a family. And when you talk about family, if you look around here, their families right here tonight, they were a real family. Ramona especially was so proud of each one of those kids. And Jim too, in his own silent way. But family was very important to the Adkins family. I asked my kids, we had to have chauffeurs to bring us here tonight. I asked on the way down, we've been on the road for 4.5 hours. They asked me a question. Did Jim ever do anything wrong? Well, they should have been here to listen to Rick. And I thought and thought and thought, and no, I couldn't think anything that he really did wrong. And a few little things that might have got in the way, I'm not going to talk about them. So, as I said, family was important to the Adkins, as they are to most of us. Then I have on my next little talk, Leech Lake. nobody ever liked Leech Lake like Ramona and Jim Adkins. If you'd been there, you would see the friends they had. Dick and Kathleen to start with, they kind of brought it all together, Ramona's uncle. And the kids, as Sean said, or no, Rob said, you almost had to get a reservation to go see them in the summertime. They were so filled up with family. We always got there, but it was always after school started, so there was a bed for us. Jim and Ramona did so many fun things at Leech Lake, but water skiing, I think, was number one. Fishing maybe was number two, and in these later years, just kind of hanging out, being with everybody was the next one. And then something that nobody's going to talk about other than me is Jim had an avid love for trains. He knew abstract. He probably knew that too. He knew Amtrak. He knew it well. They went, where didn't you go, Ramona? They went almost everywhere. They were to California. They were to Salem, Oregon. They were to Kingman, Arizona a whole bunch of times. They went to Chicago to watch the Hawkeyes almost every year in the Big Ten basketball tournament. They went a lot of places in Amtrak. Judy and I got to go with them a few times. One on a cruise to Alaska. We had to get there to, where was that in, well, you're way ahead of me. We left out of Canada, let's put it that way. To get there, we decided, for Jim mainly, we'll take the train over to Seattle. Well, that was the summer that Minnesota had just all kinds of flooding. And Amtrak didn't stop in Minnesota. We found out that the first stop they made from Leech Lake, where we left from, was Havre, Montana. Have you ever been to Havre? That's 800 miles, just a little more than 800 miles we traveled just to get on Amtrak. And we got to Amtrak, we went on the cruise, we had a great time. But that train ride was the first one for Judy and me, and it wasn't really pleasant because there was a lot of waiting. The train was hot that time, and the air conditioning was out. Not complaining about that. Anyhow, when they came we go to Laughlin, Nevada in the winter time. Jim and Ramona almost always made one trip to Laughlin, Nevada to see us in the winter time. It's a good place to go. And almost every time that they came, how do you think they got there? By train. And so they had it fixed up so that hotel would come and pick them up in Kingman, Arizona. They'd come and take them back to Kingman, Arizona when they went home. And then we just always enjoyed their time. But many times we picked places like California, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and others, where they would go into those towns. Judy and I would pick them up, and away we'd go on some of our own little side trips that we made. So that's about it. Now I still have to make notes. I was a teacher for a while, and for some reason this paper didn't get thrown away. Well, I do need to mention this. Lots of our times together we spent as Iowa Hawkeye fans. And Ramona and I think kind of led the group on that when we were stronger Hawkeye fans. And we had some great times going to, we were there when they took the goalpost out of the Metrodome, Remember that? The Hawkeyes beat Minnesota, must have been a rare occasion at that time. All the Hawkeye fans tried to take the goalposts out of the Metrodome, and that's almost impossible. But the Hawkeye fans did get that done. The final thing I have to say, and I hope I said it when I first came up here, Jim was a really, really good friend of ours, and we miss him a lot. And we'll miss him for a lot more times yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Garrett, you're on. We were talking earlier with Garrett. Mom and Jim didn't intend to come down this morning, but, life has things that happen and gives you, adversity happens and you get an opportunity. And getting to our own savings bank was one of the great things for our family and for Jim that ever happened. I know he meant a lot to them, but it meant that we were all here together in the end, and it didn't start out that way. But it's one of those happy accidents, so, I really thought it was important to have somebody from the bank come, and, it's not easy, cause it's gonna be a hard one. And Garrett, you're on.
Okay, so my name's Garrett Halson. It was my privilege to have Jim as my boss, a mentor, and a friend. I worked with Jim at the bank, where he spent over 21 years. Jim was a teacher at heart and left us with more lessons than we could count. The best way I know to remember Jim is to let his words do the talking. Short lines with a lot of wisdom. Today I'll hold those lines up and we'll remember the man behind them. If you believe in the hereafter, you know what we're here after. Jim often said this as a greeting, often in the morning or just before a meeting. It always got a smile, but it set the tone. We were there for a purpose. With Jim, purpose didn't mean pressure. It meant clarity. For Jim, the hereafter was doing the best we could for our customers and each other. If it wasn't for people like them, there wouldn't be any need for people like us. He said this when we were dealing with a tough situation or a difficult person. Although Jim could be sarcastic, I never thought of this one as sarcasm. It was perspective. Jim believed our work mattered most when things got tough. When patience and calm were in short supply, he taught us to serve with steadiness. And then there was Jim's people first attitude. So the story goes, I wasn't there, but the story goes Jim, Noah Hunter, Scott Epperly, and Ken Flaherty were heading to DMAC to talk to a group about lending. On the drive there, the guys were talking about who was going to say what, and Jim was quiet. Then he interrupted and he said, with a smile, you guys don't have to worry about a thing. I got this. So they got in there, and Jim's time to go up. Takes a pen, on the whiteboard, he writes really big relationships. Caps the pen, says, that's all you gotta know. Any questions? What followed was a lively conversation, hands up, story shared, real learning. Jim knew when you started with people, the rest finds its place. Then there was, today we inadvertently loaned. Every loan gets a short comment for context. Handy for bankers, and theoretically for regulators and auditors. If the deal wasn't pretty on paper, but we knew the person was good for it, Jim's favorite comment opener was, today we inadvertently loaned so-and-so. We laughed. The regulators, they took notes. So after a while, we stopped sending them our comments. Mostly because Jim treated the script like a loose suggestion. I was worried you went to the barn and the hogs got you. Jim would say this when you were gone longer than he expected. This was his way of checking in with humor. Under the joke was genuine care. Are you okay? Do you need a hand? He had a gift for turning a call out to a check-in. They're educated beyond their intelligence. This one came out when credentials were loud and common sense was quiet. Jim valued learning about others. He never stopped. And it seemed he believed wisdom showed up in how you treated other people and whether you kept your word. He reminded us that titles and degrees don't do the work, people do. And the best people pair modesty with no pride. I'm about done. The early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. So every Wednesday morning, 6:30, Jim had breakfast at the Master Griller in Earl with our colleague and longtime friend Jim Kress. When I went to work in the Earl office, they included me, which I was proud of. It might seem small, but it wasn't small to me. Sitting at that table at daybreak, listening to their stories, swapping lessons, laughing, I felt welcomed into something that mattered. That's who Jim was. He made room at the table and made you feel like you belonged there. So when I think about legacy, I think about echoes. Jim's voice still echoes in Eat Bank. In the way we greet the day with purpose, the way we stay steady in difficult situations, the way we start with relationships, the way we check on each other with a joke and a smile, the way we sort busy from important, and the way we remember that character wins out over credentials. So in Jim's honor, I'm keeping his words close. The next time one of us says, if you believe in the hereafter, or I thought the hogs might have got you, we'll all smile because Jim's still teaching us. There you go.
Yeah, you did really good, Darren. Nice job. Thank you. John? Scared?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna give you the opportunity. Okay, I'm Sean Atkins. If I don't know you, this isn't on my script, so, but, seeing y'all here, it's touched my heart. So I'm gonna read for this reason right now, but, touched my heart. I know no one has to be here. It's a Friday night, etc., so I appreciate it. I am going to read this tonight. Sorry, I'm afraid if I'm gonna get through it, that's probably the only way that I'll be able to do it. On behalf of Ramona, the five brothers, and our immediate families, I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy lives on a Friday night to remember, celebrate, and give thanks and presents and the impact of Jim, Dad, in our lives. I'd like to speak about the irony of Dad's life tonight. And no, I'm not referencing the fact that there's two attorneys speaking at a celebration of life. I'm pretty sure he's not super stoked about that. And a good lawyer joke. Dad was born in 1946, small town living on a farm, as Rick already mentioned. Around 9 years old, he experienced the most impactful event of his life, which he spoke of often, and as he explained it to me, my grandfather Lloyd was found dead in a cornfield. Grandma and the family went to town, and I lived with my great-grandmother. Dad and Linda grew up without a father. I share the story because of the irony. The man who grew up never knowing a father's love. The man that grew up without fatherly mentorship. The man who didn't get to have his dad teach him how to hunt, fish, or let alone hook a duck. A man who grew up without a dad cheering or beaming with pride while he played football, basketball, or baseball. The man who had to learn how to, without a dad, cut firewood, garden, build anything and everything. The man who never had a dad at his wedding, graduation, or promotions. The man who never got to share his experiences with his dad of excitement, love, and pride of his grandchildren or great-grandchildren. Myself and my brothers have all these things because of Dad. He was always mentoring us, teaching us how to behave or not behave when needed. I specifically remember a wiffle ball bat tucked securely under the front seat of the station wagon that magically appeared on the way up to the lake. Ramona, take the wheel. There are many hunting trips, and even more fishing experience. He actually taught us how to fish so well that Rob, BH, hooked a duck once and it became a kite. So true. He never missed any games. If he could possibly be there, he was. There were times that he drove all the way from Mason City to Cedar Rapids just to see Rob and I play. Dad could build anything and everything. We helped him re-roof a house, side a house, remodel a basement, change the oil in the cars. He kept a Gremlin running, actually 2 of them. So I know some people know what those were, for over 300,000 miles, by sheer mechanical prowess. And for the Grahams in the audience, guess what? There was no YouTube, so he didn't have that to figure out how to do it. Dad never missed any of the events. For us, our kids, our grandkids, he attended it all. He showed up. Usually after some crazy train ride or car ride, but never an airplane. That's pretty ironic, huh? I remember once Dad and Ramona were driving to Jacksonville, Florida for the wedding of our daughter. There was a particularly strong hurricane coming across the Gulf, and I was already in trouble because I stayed home waiting to see if I needed to board up our house or whatever, so my wife Michelle was already very irritated with me. I drove across I-10 in the middle of the storm, and so I personally experienced how bad the storm was. I just beat it. I was worried about them because they were driving down through the middle of Georgia, and I looked at the path, and it was right over the interstate they were traveling on, and it was still a Cat 2. I called, he texted, he said he was stopping for the night. He was in the hotel. They had lost, he said it was bad outside, they lost power. And I said, because that's because the eye is going directly over you, get back inside. He's outside giving me a play-by-play. That weekend, that Iowa boy retold 50 times that story of how, to anyone who listened, of how he survived the eye of a hurricane. Our kids and grandkids met and were deeply loved by one of the finest examples of grandfather that exists. And not only our kids, but he was a grandfatherly figure to all kids and dogs he came in contact with. Ironically, we had all these things he never had because of him. I prayed to become half the man that he was. Ironically, Dad was not a person who said, "I love you" often. He didn't have to. I know and feel his fatherly love deeply every day. In the military, when a warrior falls, his fellow warriors must pick up and complete the mission. Watch us. We will make you proud. You've touched our hearts and our minds. We got it from here. You taught us. You did well, very well. I love you, Dad. Thank you.
Yeah, it gets harder now, right? Clint, you're on. Concerned, so don't disappoint me.
Yeah, I got to follow Sean. Thank you for that, Brad. I'm going to stay a bit shallower than that for this portion of the program. So, struggled a bit with how to start this. A lot of Jim's stories to sort through. But gotta start with 23 South York, Mason City, Iowa. More specifically, the wood burning stove. So growing up, we had this one wood burning stove in the basement, which of course Jim built himself. It's kind of a if you know, you know thing, but trust me, it was iconic. I mean, this thing would get hotter than the blazes of hell. I have this image in my head of Jim opening up the top and dropping in these massive stumps. Picture the middle of winter, Mason City, Iowa, early 80s, below zero outside, and us boys are downstairs watching TV in our underwear because the basement is a freaking sauna. trust me, Jim wasn't happy until you were down to your underwear. If you still had a shirt on, it wasn't hot enough. Eventually, we would hear Jim shuffling down the stairs, and he'd look over at the fire with a shit-eating grin, and always said the same thing. She got her back up now, ain't she? How many times? Not lying? Two things I remember most about Jim were his willingness to help anyone, even strangers, and of course, his legendary sayings and one-liners. If you knew Jim, you're familiar with his sayings, but for those of us that were around him for 50 plus years, they're burned into our brains. Me and the brothers have been texting in a group chat some of our favorites. He has some news. Occasionally, I will say them without even thinking. One day at home, one of the slightly vulgar ones came out of my mouth, and Megan was like, "What did you just say? What does that even mean?" To which I responded, "Come on, preacher's prick, Sal's ass, what are you not getting here?" Many of you won't get that one. So for context, the expression is, "It's like a preacher's Bible in his hand." Jim had an alternate version. Alrighty, moving on to Bear's ass. Another Jim classic. Where the hell am I? During said group chat, my brother Scott mentioned he uses this expression all the time, even when it doesn't apply. And the more I thought about it, it is a very versatile expression. There's the obligatory Leaf Lake usage. "Man, the waves were a bear's ass out at Goose today." But it also translates well to things like traffic conditions. I-80 was just a bear's ass this morning with all the construction. Sports. Couldn't get my driver going today, really made the back nine a bear's ass. Even work. Man, that 2-hour Zoom meeting was a bear's ass. You get the idea. So as a takeaway, in your daily conversations, I encourage all of you to mix in a little bear's ass and think of it. The cliche, he would do anything for anybody, was not a cliche with Jim. He would. There used to be a guy up at Leech Lake named Pat. Pat was a poor Indian man that lived in a little rundown shack in Ottawa. I realize they aren't called Indians anymore, but this is a Jim story, so we're sticking with that. Pat had no money, probably some substance abuse issues, and to be brutally honest, Pat didn't smell good. Anyway, Pat didn't own a car, so he would either ride his bike or walk wherever he went. And as some of you know, it's a long way from Onagum to anywhere on bike or foot. Anytime Jim saw Pat, he would pick him up and give him a ride to wherever he was going, including one time to Bemidji, almost an hour away. How many of us would do that? I would not, but that was Jim. Jim's willingness to help came not only from his kind heart, but also because the guy literally knew how to do everything. He could build or fix anything. To the younger generation here, before Google, YouTube, and AI, if you wanted to know how to do something, you called Jim. He helped me roof my house. Built my deck. And finished my basement, including all the wiring. Sliced down shallow and countless other smaller projects. when I say helped, I mean he did it. And I helped with the grunt work. Now, there's no way I can help, no way I could do any of those things again today, but the experience of doing them with him are memories I won't forget. Not a sad part, not a sad part. When we were building the deck, we had everything all laid out. Posts were set, joists were all lined up and whatnot. And all that was left was to put on deck boards. Jim was standing there looking at it, kind of doing one of these. And I could just feel a one-liner coming on. He says, "Looks to me like all you have left is a lot of screwing." I hear him saying that. Not going to lie, I was a little nervous about the basement wiring, but it was Jim, so I had no doubt he knew what he was doing. So he was showing me how to wire the outlet boxes or recessed lights or whatever. And pretty soon I was like, okay, I got it. So I went over to start doing some while he was busy doing whatever he was doing. Now, if you've ever worked on a project with Jim, you know how much patience he has for not doing things the right way. AKA his way. Anyway, after a while, Jim wanders over to check my work, and he says, gently, and with great patience and understanding, "Don't do it like that, you'll burn your house down." I told Mom many times, Jim was one of the smartest guys I knew. Unfortunately, later in life, that did not translate to technology. His battles with technology were epic. And he did not hide his disdain for it. In fact, he could often be heard saying that Ted Kaczynski had it right. Might have to Google that one, younger generation. I remember one time at the lake, not too long ago, he was going on some rant about a check that hadn't cleared yet. The exchange went something like this. Me: "Don't you have autopay set up?" Jim: "No, I'm not doing that." Me: "Well, why do you need to clear so bad?" Jim: "So I can balance my checkbook." Me: "You still balance your checkbook?" Jim: "Every day." Me: "Why?" Jim: "What the hell else I got to do?" Here's an actor shutting down a conversation. Since I work in technology, Jim thought I was the guy to ask when he ran into issues. And even though I generally knew nothing about his printer, iPad, smartphone, Alexa, Apple Watch, email, text, online banking, name your tech issue that he was having, I could usually Google it and figure it out. And I could have showed him how to do that too, but I never did. I always helped him. And I think it was because I thought it was cool that he was actually coming to me for help. Felt like I was paying back just a little bit. I don't know where Jim is right now, but if he's in the right place, and I know he is, the A&W root beer flows like wine. The Dilly Bars grow on trees. They only serve food with 3 G's. Anybody? Thank you. Maria, thank you. Favorite daughter? Greasy gashes and good taste. The lakes are stocked with both perch and walleye because we all know where there's perch, there's walleye. Come on, man, this is a layup. Where there's perch, there's walleye. The jukebox is stuck on Neil Diamond, and the only technology in sight is an all John Wayne streaming service playing the Duke 24/7. As Jim would say, if you believe in the hereafter.
My friends and family are never gonna believe that I was the shortest. Right after, for anybody that I don't know, probably should have said that an hour ago. So, Jim was my stepdad for 50 years. And I know everybody's gonna be shocked to hear this, but growing up in our house, I would not describe Jim as patient or affectionate. And Clint, you had a great segue. There were 2 ways to do things in our house. There was the wrong way, and there was Jim's way. To this day, I cannot do a project without being short and irritated by anyone around me. It's just how you project. That thing over there, just, yeah, that. But in putting together, a lot of these pictures were scanned from their photo albums, Mom and Jim's photo albums, and so because I was back here, that rested with me, and so as I was doing it, it's a therapeutic thing to go through that and see these things. And despite how I might have perceived him as a kid, and believe me, with 5 boys, I don't think until I became a parent, I appreciated that he actually was probably more patient than I gave him credit for, because you had 5 boys that were either doing one of 2 things. 1, trying to one-up one another, or 2, using the younger ones as test pilots, which was a lot of fun. But something happened along, at least from my vantage point as a kid who became an adult and then had kids of my own, in my view of Jim, and that to me was something that I thought, at least at the time, fundamentally changed him. And that was when he became a grandfather. It was, I can't even begin to describe it. It was like a person changing before my eyes in real time. And I used to kid him because he was so engaged with the grandkids, and he became a yes man, right? This guy who's like, no, growing up was like, yes, and do you want more candy, or do you want to watch another movie, or what, And that's how he was with his grandkids. These pictures you see as they're going through, almost none of them with his grandkids are posed. That they are him doing something with them, or if they are posed, it's him stopping for a moment to take a picture from what he's doing. He's building a treehouse, he's playing cards, he's fishing with them, he's skiing them. The proudest thing that I think his proudest thing was that he taught every single one of his grandkids, his kids, yeah, but his grandkids to water ski. You ask him, oh yeah. And so Rob was talking about, 32 miles an hour. He knew that stuff, right? He hung on to that stuff and filed it away. The other thing that struck me in scanning these pictures was I was reminded that Mom and Jim never took a vacation for themselves. They went to see somebody, so they went down to Miami to see my Aunt Kitty and Uncle Dick. They went to down to Texas to see his Uncle Don. They went on a vacation with Dick and Judy, or Ross and Myra, where they Wayne and Martha, the houseboat trip on the Mississippi, right? He was always going to see somebody and share his time with somebody. And of course, when you come up to the lake, you got to come up to the lake. I mean, when are you going to come? Well, ask Ramona. She's got the calendar. You got to come up to the lake. And what that process of putting all these pictures and scanning them and sending to Brooke, by the way, Brooke did all this, that's up here, and there's music afterwards, sort of reminded me that you kind of get lost in your life and you forget, you know, sort of what somebody was doing was that Jim was somebody who shared his life with everyone around him. He gave of himself to all of us, whether it was friends or family or coworkers or neighbors, you name it. He shared himself. And that is a gift. And we will all miss him greatly. So, a toast to Jim, if you will, because I still have some drink left because our bartender's doing a great job. And then, sweetheart, you're on.
Yes.
We're gonna, first of all, toast to Jim Adkins. God bless him. There'll be another one. Cheers. So, the song is Over the Rainbow. I don't know that it has any real significance. Caitlin at 14 was cast as Dorothy. And Jim was there. Mom liked rainbows. And I don't know, we were talking about what she could play, and this one came up, so I'm going to bring you the mic.
Tell us to work with the mic, so I'm gonna thanks, it's all family and friends here, right? It's like, I would start doing it and it would be weird, I'd rather just, no. Can everyone hear me okay like this? Okay. Thanks, Ben. Alright. That you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebird that